Now just look at me. They said I was wasting my time. They said it everywhere. Over the clatter of forks at Sunday dinner, under lamps that turned faces the color of overripe fruit, on couches where my friends unfolded like magazines and skimmed my life for the parts they liked to criticize. When are you going to get a real job, Danny? That little project of yours, is it still a thing? Maybe if you were less stubborn. I learned to keep my mouth still when they talk the way you do when a doctor presses a tongue depressor and says open wide. I learned to nod without agreeing. I learned that silence could be a roof that didn't leak if you patched it every night. They thought I was making something small and silly in the dark. They weren't entirely wrong. There was darkness. There was smallness. But silly? No. What I was building had teeth and patience. It had a stubborn heart and a long memory. It had my name in it even when no one else did. I rented a studio at the back of a warehouse that used to hold a printing press. The walls remembered newspapers. Those morning promises the world used to make itself before it learned to lie by algorithm. When the freight elevator rattled, dust rose in sheets and drifted like slow snow. I swept paths through it with my feet. I didn't post photos. I didn't bring visitors. I kept the blinds closed and the light on. At 1 a.m. the building sounded like a long inhales and rattling exhales. I worked between them. My laptop, a second-hand camera, a mic stand that leaned like an old man. Scripts, hundreds of them. Marked in pencil, the margins hairlined with notes only I could read. A story studio for a single voice. I pitched quietly and often. I wrote, I rewrote, I tore paragraphs in half. I learned finger memory for rejection. Grab, open, scan, exhale, file. I answered emails with a gentleness I didn't always feel. Thank you for considering. Then I kept building. When the first anonymous podcast hit 100 downloads, I stared at the number until my eyes watered. When it reached 10,000, I unplugged the modem and sat on the floor, laughing without sound. When it hit 1 million, after the mystery reviews, the late-night shares, the clip that someone with an audience of someone else's audiences posted, I didn't tell a soul. I walked down to the corner bakery and bought 1 eclair. I ate it standing up. A woman with flour on her apron said, "You look like you won something." And I said, "I did. Lottery. Something rarer," I said and meant it. The thing about making something anonymous is that there's no place for applause to stick to you. It rushes past like wind, cooling, invisible, useful. People loved the voice that wasn't named. They wrote to it, into it, around it. Your work saved my morning. Your story made me call my mother. Who are you? I let the work answer. There is a version of this story in which I am noble. I keep my secret because humility is elegant and mystery is on brand. That is not my version. I hid because it was warmer. Criticism from people you love hurts like cold. It moves into your bones and makes itself a chair. Friends threw blankets, advice and pity, suggestions and thin encouragements, and called it comfort. Family installed a weather system over my head and acted surprised when it rained. "Are you eating?" my mother asked over and over. "Enough," I said. "Enough what?" my sister asked. "Enough to keep going," I said, and poured the last of the coffee. My father didn't ask. He smiled the smile of a man who believed in hard work as a god and wanted proof that this god saw me. "Send me something when it's, official." "What counts as official?" I said. He shook his head, not unkindly. "You'll know." He was right. When the licensing deal came in, I knew. When the feature was greenlit, I knew. When the email with the subject line "We'd like to discuss an acquisition" landed at 2:07 a.m., I knew the way you know that a storm has turned and is now moving with the wind at its back. I read the number 3 times. I said it out loud once to the empty room. It sounded like someone else's luck. I didn't tell anyone. It's funny the way success looks like luck from across a room. Up close, it's a dented kettle. It's 400 drafts. It's a callus you polish with use. But from the couch of a friend who knows exactly where you sit in the constellation of your old life, it looks like you tripped and landed in clover. "You're different," said Harper, who used to call me every time she needed someone to help her move houseplants. "Can you come early on Saturday? I have this ficus, 0.5s. I can't," I said. "I have to work." "You always say that." She laughed to make it soft. "On what?" "A deadline." "For what?" I sipped my water and watched the ice turn itself. Stories, I said, because it was both true and vague enough to survive. You're so secretive lately, she said, and then, you know I love you, right? Of course, I said, because that was what people like us said. It wasn't a lie exactly. Just didn't hold as much as it used to. The truth is that even good friends keep score a little. They weigh favors on thumbed scales and call it fairness. I had stopped keeping score the day I realized I could either count or write, but not both. The day before the conference, my mother texted me a photo of a flyer she'd found at the library. Women in Storytelling, Voices That Move Us. There it was in type, buried 6 names down, my anonymous imprint, my house of work, listed as a keynote partner. Look, she wrote. Someone with your company's name. What a coincidence. Wild. I typed and erased the word and typed, small world. The stage had 6 chairs and too much light. I sat between a documentarian who'd slept on floors in 3 countries and a poet who looked like she could turn steel into water with a sentence. I was introduced as a producer known for building a home for quiet thunder. The audience hummed like a hive. We talked about process, persistence, the way you keep going when the world claps for the wrong things. No one asked who I really was because the work was already on stage. After the panel, a woman who made films about river towns took my hand in both of hers. Thank you, she said, and I believe she meant it. You don't sound like a brand. You sound like a person. I am a person, I said, and we laughed, the relieved laugh of people who still remember how. I could have slipped out the side door, and maybe I should have. The coat check was a confessional. Coats hung like slept-in sermons, and the lobby had the kind of carpet in which gossip disappears. I saw them before they saw me. My mother, my sister, my father with his careful hope, Harper with a tote bag full of things she'd want help carrying. Behind them, 2 cousins whose texts came with an assumption tax. They stood under a banner with my company's mark on it, speaking in the warm, irritated way families do in public spaces. Then my mother's face changed. She'd seen me. I watched recognition move through her. Puzzlement, surprise, the little jolt of pride she rationed out during holidays. She lifted her hand. I lifted mine. We navigated the carpet. Hi, she said, breathless. We didn't know you'd be here. I was on the panel, I said, and smiled the way you do when entering cold water. How did you like it? You were wonderful, she said, and then because she was my mother, you should have told us. Would it have mattered? The words came gently, to my credit or shame. My father looked from me to the banner and back. He folded his arms like a man measuring a beam. Is this yours? Yes, I said. How long? My sister asked. From the beginning, I said. Harper's mouth went small. You never, why didn't you tell us? I wanted to see how it sounded, I said. When I was no one. That's dramatic, she said, and we all let that hang. My mother reached out, smoothed a wrinkle in my sleeve as if I were a bed she'd just made. We're proud of you, she said. We always. No, I said, and not unkindly. You weren't. Silence is heavier than it looks. It bent the conversation, warped the air. My father nodded once, slowly, the way men do when they're trying not to rush. I'll say it now, he said. I'm proud of you. Thank you, I said, and meant it. Then the money started walking toward me, wearing relatives' faces. It's a strange thing to watch kindness evaporate into calculus. My cousin Julian cleared his throat. Funny timing, he said, like timing was a pet that came when he whistled. My startup's in a bridge round. Nothing crazy. Small check. You'd? No, I said. It's a sure thing, he said, and blinked, offended by physics. Then you won't need me, I said. My other cousin, Tasha, smiled as if tipping a waiter. I have a script. People say it's so you could attach your. No? You haven't even read it. That's true, I said. And yet. Harper hugged me like a closing argument and whispered. My rent. Just for a month. You know I'd do it for you. You didn't, I said. When I needed quiet, you brought plants. That's unfair. It is, I said. Which makes it accurate. I watched disappointment assemble into resentment like scaffolding. It got taller by the second. Denial isn't a dramatic no. It's an even one. It's a sentence without apology. The evenness is what makes people angry. You've changed, Harper said, and I almost laughed. The truth was simpler. I had stopped wanting to be rearranged by other people's needs. My mother's eyes had filled and emptied twice. She took my hand, and in her grip I felt both my childhood and the place where it had ended. "Come to dinner," she said. "Bring your team? Your people." "My people are at work," I said. "As am I." She sighed. "Always." "Always," I said and kissed her cheek. "I love you. I am busy." Both can be true. At home the studio looks smaller the way kitchens do after a wedding. The eclair plate I hadn't thrown away, the mug with the chip, the floor I'd swept with my feet. I sat in the desk chair the landlord called decorative, and pressed my palms to the surface where I had built my freedom. There is a kind of loneliness that feels like a well dug correctly, deep enough to draw from, lined so it doesn't collapse. I lowered the bucket and drank. A message blinked on my screen. The acquisition had closed. The wire had cleared. The figure had commas like ladders. I sent 3 emails. One to my lawyer, one to the poet with steel-melting sentences offering to fund her next book, and one to a woman who ran a community studio with broken windows and shining kids. No strings, I wrote and signed it with a company name not my own. Anonymous is a kind of love too. I slept. I woke to rain. I worked until the rain forgot it was rain and became morning. The phone rang for days. Friends with things that sounded like emergencies. Relatives with calendars full of coffee. I let most of it go to voicemail. The ones I answered like an adult. "No, I can't fund that. No, I can't read this. No, I won't co-sign your lease. No, I don't feel bad about it." People who had never said congratulations found new ways to say help. Harper posted a photo of the ficus without me. "We managed," she captioned it, and I scrolled past and felt nothing. That surprised me more than anger would have. My mother began to send recipes like truce offerings. "This is the roast you liked when you were little. This soup is good for late nights. That bread you called cloud bread when you were 4. I printed them. I folded them into a drawer. I made the bread. Tasted like something still possible. When my father called, he didn't mention money. He said, "I've been listening to that show, the anonymous one. Your mother thinks it's you. Is it you?" "Yes," I said. He made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "I knew it," he said. "You write like you're building furniture. Strong joints. Nothing wobbles. That's the goal," I said, and the floor of me steadied. "You know I was wrong," he said. "About what counts as official." "You weren't wrong," I said. "You just didn't know the paperwork." He cleared his throat. "Come by Sunday," he said. "No roast. Just you." "I'll try," I said, and meant it the way you mean it when you are relearning your parents' house. The profile came out the following week. A journalist who specialized in quiet thunder had been following the imprint for a year. My yes had been a carefully tailored one. We took photos in the studio without showing the address. The article didn't name the number, but the shape of it was visible under the clothes. "Anonymous no more," the headline said, and I winced because anonymity hadn't been a costume, it had been a coat. But the story was kind and not wrong. It described the way my voice had found people as if by scent. It described the work as a lighthouse for people who like to stand in the rain until they're washed clean. I liked that. I printed it and taped it to the wall where the paint had bubbled. The comments were split. Strangers said, "Thank you." Strangers said, "Sell out." Strangers said, "I always knew it was a woman." That last one made me laugh out loud. As if gender left fingerprints on paragraphs. The people I knew said less. The air around me shifted to thinner to clearer. Invitations dried up. It turned out people liked me better when they could pretend I wasn't doing anything they had to measure themselves against. Success is unflattering lighting. I learned to leave parties before it got bright. And then, as if the world had been waiting for me to come up for air, a letter arrived on real paper. Thick, handsome paper like a tuxedo had grown flat. The return address was from the arts high school where Miss Keating once told me my voice was too careful to matter. She was retiring. There would be an event. Would I speak? I said yes. The auditorium hadn't changed. The seats were the same deep red that refuses stains. The stage had high school ghosts stuck to it, the outlines of school plays with cardboard moons, a pep rally or 5, a microphone that learned to tell the difference between a talent show and a confession. I stepped up to the podium and told the truth the long way. I talked about mornings that felt like bruises at the bottom of teacups, about writing quietly enough to hear the hinge of a sentence swing open. I said that art is work and that work is holy only when you show up on the days you feel unblessed. I said the thing I hadn't said to Miss Keating when I was 17. Careful isn't the same as afraid. When it was over, she shook my hand with the small smile of someone who believes that she taught you something anyway. Maybe she had. Doubt is a kind of resistance training. You lift it or it crushes you. Afterward, a girl with hair the color of nervousness waited with a folded notebook. My mother says this is a phase, she said. Writing. She's right, I said. But some phases take your whole life. Her eyes did the thing hope does. Will you sign my? Of course, I said, and wrote, keep going until the page gets tired of you. Outside it was raining again. Even the asphalt seemed to be listening. Success changed less than I'd been warned and more than I'd hoped. It didn't make mornings easier. It didn't make my back ache less. It did not lace my shoes. It did not pour the coffee. What it did was this: it made my no solid. It made my yes clean. When the last investor called asking if I'd consider an exit I didn't want, I said, no thank you, and slept for 8 hours with both hands open. When my mother texted, dinner is at 6. No speeches, I put on a sweater that didn't look like money and went. At the table, the roast looked like a favorite song. My father passed bread. My sister told a story with her hands. The kitchen smelled like thyme and the patient kind of heat. We read the article, my mother said, as if it were a new neighbor. They made you sound important. I am to me, I said, and she rolled her eyes because she had taught me that sentence. My father buttered his bread like a carpenter sanding a beam. What are you working on now? He asked. A series about women who say no, I said. He nodded. I'd listen to that. I know, I said and meant it. After dinner, my mother pulled me into the hallway where the light has always been bad. She touched my face like it was just my face. You don't have to bring us anything, she said. Not money. Not proofs. Just you. I brought bread, I said. She smiled. Show off. There are still texts I don't answer and calls I let ring. There are rooms I enter that dim on purpose. There are old friends who look at me like a riddle they didn't study for. That's all right. I am no one's exam. At night, when the studio breathes, I count sacrifices I can't list on a grant application. Birthdays skipped, trips postponed. The ache of saying no when yes would have made me popular. I think of how often they demoralized me and called it realism. How unkind criticism looks when it puts on family clothes and says grace. I think of every time someone said I wouldn't amount to anything and how I turned that sentence over like soil and planted a stubborn orchard in it. I think of what it cost. Quiet meals, cheap coffee, hair pulled back under 1,000 Tuesday nights. The cost was real. It was worth paying. That math isn't written anywhere you can show at dinner. I stand at the window and watch the city keep its own pace. Somewhere, a siren is singing for a stranger. Somewhere, a woman is saying no for the first time and meaning it all the way through. On my wall, the printout of the article has begun to curl. The tape lets go a little more each week. That's fine. I know the story by heart. They never thought I would amount to anything. And now, well, just look at me.